The long years of struggle between humans and the alien kingdom of Surina had finally come to an end. Across the stars, both sides had grown tired of mistrust and fear. At last, a peace treaty was signed, and a new era was promised. The capital world of Surina prepared to welcome the human delegation, not with cold suspicion, but with cautious hope. The palace of Surina stood like a crown upon a hill of crystal stone. Its tall spires shone under the light of twin suns, and its gardens stretched wide, filled with flowers that glowed faintly in the evening air. It was here that the first steps of peace would be celebrated, and here too that humans and Surina's royal family would meet face to face. Among the human delegation was a soldier named Tamash. He was not a leader, nor a man of great fame. He had been chosen simply as one of the honor guards, a role of discipline and patience. His armor was plain compared to the robes of the ambassadors, but his posture was steady, his eyes calm. When the humans entered the grand hall of the palace, many alien eyes studied them. The Surina people were graceful beings, their forms slender, their voices soft. Their skin carried faint shades of silver and blue, and their eyes shone like pools of light. Among them, sitting beside the throne, was Princess Myra. Myra was known among her people as quiet and gentle. She did not speak loudly like her father, the king, nor command with power like her elder siblings. Instead, she listened. She watched carefully, always calm, always reserved. Her presence was like a soft song that comforted those around her. As the ambassadors exchanged speeches, Myra's gaze moved across the human delegation. Many of the humans spoke with pride, their words firm, their gestures strong. But her eyes paused when they reached Tamash, the silent guard standing at the side. He was not speaking. He did not try to impress anyone. Yet something in his stillness drew her attention. Tamash did not shift impatiently, nor did he let his eyes wander rudely around the hall. He stood with quiet respect, his hands steady at his sides, as if he understood the weight of this meeting. Myra found herself curious. Who was this man who carried himself with such calmness, though he held no title? When the speeches ended, the hall filled with music. The first feast of peace began, with long tables set in the shining gardens. Humans and Surina nobles sat together, tasting each other's foods, learning each other's customs. Laughter and cautious words blended in the air like two streams meeting. Myra walked slowly through the garden paths, her silver-blue dress flowing lightly with each step. She greeted nobles, answered polite questions, and smiled softly when needed. Yet, more than once, her eyes searched for the quiet soldier. Tamash stood near the far edge of the garden, his post beside a carved arch. The glow of the lanterns above lit his features gently, showing the calmness on his face. He did not look out of place, though everything around him was foreign. When Myra's gaze reached him again, she felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. The princess lowered her eyes quickly, reminding herself that she was a royal daughter of Surina. It was not proper to let her thoughts drift toward a soldier of another world. Yet the thought remained. Later that night, when the guests began to leave, Myra passed by the arch where Tamash stood. She moved with grace, as she always did, but for a brief second, her eyes met his. Tamash did not bow too deeply, nor did he speak. He only offered a small, respectful nod, his expression calm yet kind. Myra returned the nod, her face as gentle as ever. That single moment, though silent, carried more meaning to her than all the speeches spoken that day. As the stars rose above the palace, Myra returned to her private chambers. She sat near the wide window, the twin moons shining softly across her face. She thought about the humans, about the future of peace, and about the soldier who had stood so quietly among them. For the first time in many years, she felt a spark of curiosity that touched her heart. She did not understand it fully, nor did she wish to speak of it yet. But the memory of his steady eyes remained with her, as if quietly reminding her that peace was not only written in treaties, but also found in the simplest of human gestures. Far across the palace, Tomasz stood at his assigned quarters, removing his armor piece by piece. He thought about the day as well, about the shining halls and gentle alien people. He remembered especially the princess's eyes, calm and bright, like the quiet surface of water under starlight. He had no thought that she might have noticed him. To him, he was only a soldier doing his duty. Yet both carried the same memory into their night, the memory of a brief meeting of eyes, and the beginning of something they could not yet name. The days of peace continued in Serina's capital. Ceremonies filled the palace halls, and banquets stretched late into the night. Each event was carefully planned to show trust between the two worlds. Humans spoke proudly of their journeys across the stars, while the Serina nobles showed their culture of grace and tradition. Tomasz remained where he always was, standing as a guard at the edge of the gatherings. He spoke little, but he observed everything. His task was not to enjoy, but to protect. He knew his place well. Yet even as he kept his eyes sharp, he often noticed the gentle figure of Princess Myra. Myra, too, was present at every gathering. She moved like a quiet star, always calm, always polite. She listened to the words of the guests, smiled when spoken to, and carried herself with soft dignity. But her gaze, every so often, drifted to the one human who did not seek attention. It was on the third evening, in the palace garden, when fate offered a small moment between them. The garden of Serina was no ordinary place. The flowers glowed faintly, their petals like pieces of the night sky. Streams of clear water ran in winding paths, and gentle lights floated in the air like slow fireflies. Guests walked through the paths, speaking softly under the stars. Myra had come to enjoy a moment of quiet among the blossoms. As she reached for a fragile flower with long silver petals, her hand trembled slightly. The stem was thinner than she expected, and the flower almost slipped from her fingers. Before she could lose it, another hand reached forward and steadied the stem. It was Tomasz. He had been standing nearby, as silent as ever, watching over the garden path. Without a word, he helped steady the flower. Myra looked up at him, her calm eyes meeting his. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. Tomasz gave a small nod. "It is nothing, Princess," he replied, his tone simple, respectful. For a brief moment, the glowing light of the flowers surrounded them both. Neither spoke further, yet something unspoken passed between them. Myra felt a warmth inside her heart, while Tomasz felt an unexpected stillness of peace. They both moved on, but the memory of that touch lingered. The following day, Tomasz was assigned to stand near Myra during the formal talks. He stood a step behind her chair as nobles and ambassadors discussed trade routes, border agreements, and cultural exchanges. Though he did not understand every detail, Tomasz noticed the patience with which Myra listened. She rarely interrupted, but when she did, her words were soft and balanced, guiding the conversation gently. Tomasz admired this in silence. He thought of leaders he had known, men and women who spoke loudly, demanded obedience, or forced their will. Myra was different. Her strength was not in command, but in calmness. It reminded him of rivers on earth, steady and quiet, yet shaping the land itself. Myra, too, felt the presence of the human soldier behind her. His silence was not empty, but steady. She sensed he was not bored, not careless. He was simply present. And that presence gave her an unusual comfort, as if a shield of honesty stood nearby. That evening, as the guests left the hall, Myra walked alone in the quiet corridor. She paused when she saw Tomasz still at his post near the door. Their eyes met again, and though only a nod was exchanged, it carried more meaning than many words spoken during the day. Later that night, Myra sat by her window once more. She thought about the soldier. He had spoken so little, and yet she remembered every word. She remembered the way his hand had steadied the flower, careful and gentle, not rough or hurried. She remembered his eyes, steady as stone yet not unkind. Why do I notice him, she asked herself in silence. She had met many humans already, ambassadors, commanders, envoys, all speaking with energy and power. But the soldier, the one who never sought the center of attention, was the one she could not forget. Tomasz, in his quarters, thought little of himself. He believed he was only a shadow at the edge of history, a guard with no role in great decisions. Yet his mind returned to the princess's eyes when she thanked him. He wondered why her voice still echoed softly in his thoughts. The bond between them was still hidden, fragile as the flower he had saved. Yet it was there, unspoken, quiet, and real. Neither of them could name it, but both felt its weight. As the twin moons shone over the palace gardens, two hearts, one human, one alien, carried the memory of simple kindness. It was a connection not built by treaties, nor by power, but by silence shared between two gentle souls. And though neither spoke of it aloud, both knew something had begun. Something that could not easily be forgotten. The palace days moved slowly, filled with ceremonies and long talks. Humans and Serena nobles sat together each morning, discussing trade, laws, and friendship between their two worlds. Every evening, there were feasts or music to honor the new peace. To many, these events felt like endless duties. But for Tomasz and Princess Myra, each day carried something quietly special, the silent nearness they shared. Though they rarely spoke, Myra had begun to notice how her heart calmed when Tomasz stood nearby. He did not demand her attention, nor did he try to impress her like some human ambassadors did. His silence was steady, almost comforting. And Tomasz, though careful to remain only a soldier, found himself noticing the princess's presence more often. Her voice, soft and thoughtful, seemed to linger in his mind even after she was gone. One afternoon, a sudden rainstorm swept over the palace gardens. The glowing flowers bent under the drops, and the lanterns swayed as the wind rushed through the crystal trees. Guests hurried inside the tall marble halls, but Myra, who had been walking along a path, found herself caught far from shelter. Tomasz, who had been assigned to the garden watch that day, moved quickly to her side. "This way, princess," he said in his calm, firm tone. Without hesitation, he guided her toward a small pavilion made of stone and glass, where the rain pattered against the roof like music. For the first time, they were alone. Myra's dress shimmered faintly under the soft light, drops of rain sliding down its silver blue fabric. She stood quietly, her hands folded before her, watching the rain fall beyond the open sides of the pavilion. Tomasz stood near the edge, keeping his eyes outward as a guard should. Yet the silence between them was too strong to ignore. At last, it was Myra who spoke. "You are from Earth, are you not?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes turned to him with genuine curiosity. "Yes," Tomasz answered simply. "From a small town, far from the cities." Myra tilted her head gently. "I have heard much of Earth from the ambassadors. They speak of its trade, its machines, its armies. But they never speak of its heart. Tell me, what is it truly like?" Tomasz was quiet for a moment. Few had ever asked him such a question. At last, he said, "Earth is wide. There are great oceans, bigger than whole kingdoms. Skies so open you can walk for days and still see no walls around you. Forests, mountains, rivers, all alive, all different. It is not always gentle, but it is beautiful." Myra listened closely. His words were simple, yet she felt they carried more truth than the polished speeches of diplomats. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining vast blue seas stretching under a warm sun, skies with no crystal ceilings, and winds free to run where they pleased. "And your home?" she asked softly. "What was it like?" Tomasz's eyes grew distant. "Quiet," he said. "My family kept a farm. There were fields of grain, and hills where I would walk when I was young. Nights were filled with stars, and sometimes, in summer, fireflies. Small lights, dancing in the dark. They were like the glowing flowers here, but moving, alive. Myra smiled faintly, her expression tender. It sounds peaceful. It was, Tomasz replied. I miss it, though I know I may not return for long. My path led me to the stars. Silence returned, but it was not heavy. The sound of rain filled the air like a soft curtain, wrapping their words in stillness. Myra folded her hands tighter, her heart touched in a way she could not fully explain. This soldier, who spoke so little, had just given her a glimpse of a world she had never seen. For the first time in many years, she felt the desire to ask more, to understand more. Will you tell me again, sometime? Of Earth's rivers, of its skies. Tomasz looked at her then, his expression steady but his voice gentle. If you wish it, princess. The words hung in the air between them, simple yet carrying more weight than either expected. The rain slowly faded, and the skies cleared. A soft light fell through the glass roof, painting the pavilion in gold. Myra stepped out first, her composure calm as always, yet inside, her heart carried the memory of that conversation like a precious jewel. Tomasz followed, returning to his guard's silence. Yet his thoughts replayed the princess's questions, her quiet interest in his home. He had spoken of Earth before, but never had it felt so important. Never had it felt like sharing a secret piece of his soul. That evening, during the feast, Myra spoke as usual with the nobles, her calm smile never faltering. But in the quiet of her mind, she thought not of trade or politics, but of fields of grain, fireflies dancing in the dark, and a soldier's steady voice describing the heart of a distant world. And Tomasz, though standing at the edge of the hall, carried a new feeling inside him, a warmth he did not dare name. He reminded himself he was only a guard, a shadow at the edge of her light. But even a shadow could feel the glow of a star, if only for a moment. That night, under the twin moons, both the princess and the soldier carried the same thought: their worlds were not as far apart as they once believed. The festival ended, leaving the city of Surina glowing with new hope. Lanterns still floated in the skies days later, drifting slowly across the heavens as gentle reminders of peace. Songs of unity were sung in the markets, and children spoke proudly of the humans they had met. For many, it was the beginning of a new age. But for Princess Myra, it was the beginning of an inner struggle. She could not forget the image of Tomasz standing in the golden light, calmly pulling down the burning banner. Nor could she forget the sound of his steady voice when she had thanked him. Her heart, usually so calm and hidden, had begun to stir in ways she had never known before. Myra sat in her chamber, gazing out at the twin moons. Her thoughts drifted again and again to the human soldier. She pressed her hands together, whispering to herself, "This cannot be." She was the princess of Surina, heir to tradition and duty. Her life was not hers to give away. And yet, no matter how many times she told herself this, the memory of Tomasz remained. Her advisors noticed her distraction. At a council meeting, one elder leaned close and said gently, "Princess, your heart is kind, but remember your path is tied to your people. You must not let personal feelings cloud the peace we build." Myra lowered her eyes, saying nothing. She knew they were right. But still, the thought of denying her heart filled her with quiet sorrow. In the days that followed, she began to avoid Tomasz. When he stood near her in the halls, she kept her gaze away. When he was assigned near the garden, she chose another path. She wrapped her heart in silence once more, hoping that if she created distance, the feelings would fade. Tomasz noticed the change. He had never expected closeness, but he could feel the shift in her presence. Before, she had allowed small moments, a glance, a gentle word. Now, her eyes no longer met his, her voice never reached him. He told himself it was natural. She was a princess, and he was only a guard. Perhaps he had imagined the warmth between them. Perhaps it had never been there at all. Still, a quiet ache grew in his chest, though he never showed it. One evening, while standing outside the council chamber, Tomasz overheard nobles speaking. "The princess must be careful," one said. "Her kindness makes her vulnerable. She must not grow too close to the humans, especially not to one of their soldiers. Appearances matter." Another voice agreed. "Her duty is greater than her own heart. She must lead with clarity, not with affection." Tomasz turned away, his jaw set in silence. Their words were not meant for him, yet they confirmed what he already knew. There was no place for him in her world beyond the role of a protector. That night, as the palace grew quiet, Myra sat once more by her window. She looked out over the lantern lights drifting far into the sky. Her heart ached with the weight of unspoken feelings. She whispered into the silence, "Why must I feel what I cannot hold?" Her mind told her to forget, but her heart refused. Each memory of Tomasz came back, his steady voice describing Earth, the way his hand had gently steadied the flower, his calm strength at the festival. These memories were not grand or powerful. They were small, quiet moments. But those moments had become precious. Tomasz, in his quarters, sat polishing his armor. His hands moved with discipline, yet his thoughts wandered. He remembered the princess's smile, soft and fleeting, and wondered why it lingered so strongly in his mind. He knew she was far beyond his reach. Still, he could not erase her from his heart. The palace continued its days of ceremony, but between Myra and Tomasz, an invisible wall had grown. Their eyes no longer met, their words no longer touched. To others, nothing seemed changed. But to them, the silence was heavier than before. And yet, even in this distance, a strange truth remained: neither could truly let go. When Myra walked through the halls, she felt his steady presence even without looking. When Tomasz stood his guard, he sensed her quiet sorrow even without words. Their bond, though hidden, was not broken. It waited, like a seed beneath the soil, silent but alive. Myra lay awake one night, unable to rest. She placed her hand gently over her heart and whispered, "Perhaps this is my burden, to feel and to hide." She closed her eyes, but tears touched her lashes. Far away, Tomasz looked up at the stars from the guard's tower. He thought of his home on Earth, of fireflies glowing in the summer dark. And he thought of Myra, the gentle princess who seemed as distant as the stars themselves, yet close enough to touch his soul. In that quiet night, two hearts ached in silence, separated by duty, yet bound by unspoken truth. The time of the festival arrived, a grand celebration to honor the peace between Earth and Serena. For many days, workers decorated the capital city with banners of bright colors. The streets were lined with glowing lanterns, and the gardens were filled with flowers that shimmered like starlight. Music floated in the air, carrying both human and Serena tones blended together into one song. It was the first time in history that humans and Serena would share such a festival side by side. To the citizens, it was more than a holiday. It was proof that trust could grow where once there had been fear. To the royal family, it was a chance to show the strength of peace. And to Myra, it was something deeper, though she did not admit it aloud. She wondered quietly if she might see Tomasz in a different way this day, not only as a guard, but as a man walking among the people. The festival began with the lantern ceremony, a tradition of Serena. Each person lit a lantern and released it into the evening sky. The lanterns, made of light crystal and paper, rose gently, filling the heavens with hundreds of glowing stars. The meaning was simple: each lantern carried a wish for harmony, floating upward to be shared with the universe. Myra stood beside her father, the king, as the first lanterns rose. Her family and the human ambassadors lit their lanterns together, sending them upward. Crowds cheered as the sky filled with light. But as Myra released her lantern, her eyes drifted not to the sky, but to the crowd where Tomasz stood. He was there among the guards, holding no lantern of his own, yet watching the ceremony with quiet respect. The golden glow lit his face, and for a brief moment, Myra wished he could hold a lantern too. She wondered what his wish might be, if he were free to make one. The festival continued with music and dances. Serena musicians played on silver strings, while humans introduced instruments of deep drums and bright flutes. Children from both worlds ran through the gardens, laughing together without fear. Stalls were filled with food from Earth and Serena alike, sweet fruits, warm breads, shining drinks that sparkled like stars. Myra walked among her people, her presence calm and graceful. Yet every so often, her gaze sought Tomasz. She saw him standing near the steps of a crystal fountain, keeping watch but never drawing attention to himself. The sight brought her a quiet sense of comfort. As the evening deepened, a small moment of trouble stirred. A lantern, carried too low by the wind, brushed against one of the fabric banners hanging from a tall spire. The edge of the banner caught fire, a soft spark turning quickly into a spreading flame. Gasps filled the crowd. People stepped back in alarm, fearing the fire would spread across the decorations. Before anyone could react, Tomasz moved. He climbed the steps quickly, his body steady and sure, and reached for the burning banner. With careful hands, he tore the fabric down before the fire could leap higher. He stamped the flames out upon the stone ground, his motions firm but calm. The crowd exhaled in relief. No one was harmed, and the danger had ended before it could grow. Myra's heart raced as she watched him. He had not rushed wildly, nor shown fear. He had acted with simple courage, as though it were nothing at all. The nobles praised him quietly, and the human ambassadors nodded in approval. But Tomasz only returned to his post, his face as calm as before. He sought no praise, no reward. To him, it had been only his duty. Yet to Myra, it meant far more. Later, as the festival lights glowed brighter and the music filled the air, Myra found herself standing once more near the fountain. Tomasz was there, silent as ever. She approached slowly, her dress catching the lantern light. "You acted quickly," she said softly, her voice carrying gratitude. Tomasz bowed his head slightly. "It was a small thing, princess." Myra shook her head gently. "Not small. My people saw your courage. And so did I." Her words lingered, carrying more meaning than she intended. She turned away before her face could betray her feelings. Tomasz watched her go, his thoughts quiet yet unsettled. He did not see himself as brave. He had only done what was needed. But the way the princess had spoken, soft, sincere, stayed with him longer than he expected. That night, as the last lanterns floated into the sky, Myra stood on her balcony, looking upward. The stars were hidden behind the glowing lights, but she did not mind. In her heart, she carried a new light, one born from the quiet strength of a human soldier. She touched her hand to her chest and whispered to herself, "Why do I feel this way?" Her gentle nature had always been her shield, keeping her heart hidden. But now, she could no longer deny that her feelings had begun to change. And in his quarters, Tomasz lay awake, remembering the princess's words. He told himself again that he was only a guard, nothing more. Yet somewhere deep inside, he wondered if the stars themselves were carrying a different story, one not written in treaties, but in the lantern glow of two hearts slowly drawing near. The palace prepared for the final stage of the peace mission. The human envoys would soon return to Earth, their ships waiting at the great starport beyond the city. Farewell ceremonies filled the halls, with speeches of friendship and promises of lasting trust. To many, it was the perfect ending to weeks of harmony. But within Myra's heart, there was no calm. She had forced herself to keep distance from Tomasz, yet the weight of silence grew heavier each day. Every time she passed him in the corridors, her chest tightened. Every time she looked away, she wondered if he noticed her avoidance. The truth pressed against her heart like a secret that longed to be spoken. Tomasz, too, carried the same quiet ache. He told himself it was enough simply to guard her, to see her safe through these final days. Still, part of him wished for just one more chance to speak, even a single honest word, before they left forever. The chance came sooner than either expected. On the morning of departure, the royal family and the human envoys gathered at the starport. It was a vast place, built of shining crystal walls and high towers, where ships from across the stars rested like silver birds. Crowds filled the viewing platforms, watching history unfold. Myra walked at her father's side, her expression calm as always. Tomasz walked several steps behind with the honor guard. The air was filled with music and cheers, but beneath the celebration, a quiet tension stirred. As the group neared the central hall of the starport, a loud sound cracked through the air. One of the massive crystal supports trembled. A worker shouted in alarm the platform machinery had failed. A section of the walkway shuddered, and part of the structure began to collapse. Panic spread quickly through the crowd. Nobles rushed back, and guards hurried to secure the area. In the chaos, a piece of falling debris broke loose from the ceiling, heading directly toward Myra. Before she could react, Tomasz moved. His body surged forward with steady strength. Reaching Myra in time, he pulled her away, shielding her with his own frame as the crystal shattered upon the floor where she had stood. The crash echoed through the hall. Dust filled the air, and shouts rose from every side. But Myra was safe, held firmly in Tomasz's arms. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Myra looked up at him, her eyes wide, her heart racing. Tomasz met her gaze, his face calm though his chest rose with heavy breaths. "Are you hurt, princess?" he asked quietly. Myra shook her head, unable to speak. The warmth of his presence, the strength of his arms around her, sent waves of feeling through her heart. She had known he was brave, but in that instant, she understood fully, his courage was not loud or proud. It was gentle, steady, and unshakable. Guards rushed forward, clearing the debris and guiding the nobles to safety. The danger passed quickly, the damage small compared to what might have been. Yet for Myra, the moment had already changed everything. Later, when calm returned and the halls were repaired, Myra could not stop thinking of Tomasz's actions. If he had not been there, if he had not moved without hesitation. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "I cannot hide any longer." That evening, she found him alone near the outer gardens of the starport. He stood watching the departing ships, the glow of engines reflecting softly against his armor. Myra approached quietly, her steps light as falling petals. "Tomasz," she said gently. He turned, surprised to see her without attendants. He bowed slightly, as he always did. "Princess." Myra's hands trembled, though her voice stayed calm. "Today, you protected me again. I have not thanked you properly." "There is no need," Tomasz replied. "It is my duty." She shook her head. "No. It is more than duty. You did not think of yourself. You thought only of me. That is something greater." Her eyes softened, her words carrying the weight of her heart. "I have tried to keep silence, but I can no longer. You are important to me, Tomasz. More than I should admit. But it is the truth." Tomasz stood still, her words sinking deep into his heart. For weeks he had carried the same feeling, hidden and unspoken. He lowered his eyes, his voice quiet but firm. "Princess, I have felt the same. Yet I thought it wrong to speak. You are of the royal family, and I am only a soldier." Myra's lips curved into the faintest smile. "And yet, in the moment of danger, it was not a crown or title that saved me. It was you. The silence between them was gentle, filled not with distance but with closeness at last. Myra's heart felt lighter, as if the weight she had carried was finally lifted. Tomasz felt the same, though he stood as humbly as ever. The stars above the starport shone brighter that night, as if listening to the quiet truth shared between them. Neither spoke further, but both knew this was no longer a hidden bond. It was a promise, born in silence, tested by courage, and spoken at last. The night before the human delegation was to depart, the palace gardens of Serena were quiet and glowing under the twin moons. Lanterns from the festival still floated gently in the sky, their soft lights drifting like tiny stars. The air carried the scent of glowing flowers, calm and sweet. Myra walked along the garden paths, her silver-blue dress brushing lightly against the grass. Her heart felt both light and heavy at the same time. Light because she had finally faced her feelings, heavy because tomorrow Tomasz would leave for Earth. She wanted to tell him everything before it was too late. She found him standing near the crystal fountain, as he often did during quiet hours. His armor reflected the moonlight softly, but his eyes were fixed on the floating lanterns above. When he sensed her presence, he turned, and their eyes met. "Myra," he said quietly, his voice calm but warm. "Tomasz," she replied, stepping closer. Her hands trembled slightly, though her face remained composed. For a moment, neither spoke. The gentle sound of water from the fountain and the soft glow of lanterns filled the silence. Myra's heart beat quickly. She knew this was the time she could no longer hide her truth. I must tell you," Myra began, her voice soft but steady. "All these days, I have tried to keep my feelings hidden. I thought it wrong, because you are a human, and I am a princess. My duty is to my people. But my heart, it will not be silenced." Tomasz listened carefully, his calm eyes never leaving hers. He could sense the honesty in her words, the quiet courage it took for her to speak them. Myra took a deep breath. "Tomasz, I care for you. I admire your strength, your kindness, and the way you see the world. You have shown me courage not in speeches, not in titles, but in your heart. And I have come to love you." Tomasz's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, the steady guard seemed like a boy again, standing in awe of the princess. Then he stepped forward, his hands reaching out but careful, as if afraid to break the fragile truth between them. "Princess," he said softly, I have felt the same. From the first day I saw you in the palace, I knew you were different. Quiet, gentle, strong in ways I could not describe. I never imagined. I never believed a princess could notice a simple soldier like me. But my heart, it has always been with you." Myra's lips curved into a gentle smile. Relief and joy warmed her chest. She reached out, and Tomasz took her hand in his. Their fingers met, soft and steady, a bridge between two worlds. The twin moons shone above them, casting silver light over the garden. The lanterns continued to float slowly upward, carrying wishes of peace and hope. But Myra and Tomasz needed no lanterns, they had found their own light within each other. "You are not just a soldier to me, Tomasz," Myra said quietly. "You are someone I trust, someone who has shown me the meaning of courage and care. I will not hide this anymore." Tomasz smiled, a rare and genuine smile that reached his eyes. "And you are not just a princess to me. You are Myra, someone I admire, someone I care for, someone I am honored to know." For a long while, they stood silently, hands clasped, hearts open. Words were no longer needed. The peace they had helped nurture between their worlds mirrored the peace now growing quietly between them. Finally, Myra spoke again, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Tomorrow, you will return to Earth. I do not know when we will meet again. But I promise, my thoughts, my heart, they will be with you." Tomasz nodded. "And I will carry the same, princess." No matter how far, no matter how long, I will remember this night. I will remember you. The garden seemed to breathe with them. The soft rustle of leaves, the gentle sparkle of the lanterns, the distant songs of celebration, they all seemed to celebrate what words alone could not. Myra leaned slightly, placing a hand over his. Tomasz responded, a small warmth spreading between them. It was not a grand gesture, nor a dramatic declaration. It was simple, gentle, and full of truth, the kind of honesty that could survive distance, time, and worlds apart. When the night grew deeper and the first light of dawn began to glow over the horizon, Myra and Tomasz finally stepped back. They did not part with sadness, but with hope. They had spoken what mattered, and in doing so, they had given each other a gift more lasting than gold or jewels, a connection of hearts, honest and true. As the first human ships lifted into the sky the next morning, Myra watched from the palace balcony. Tomasz stood among his people, looking up at her with the same calm warmth she had come to know. Though the distance would be great, their bond would remain. And in that moment, under the twin moons fading into dawn, both realized something important: true courage is not only in battle or duty, but in speaking the truth of the heart. And in that courage, a gentle alien princess and a human soldier had found something neither time nor space could take away. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, carrying the promise of a future where two worlds could live in peace and two hearts could grow together, no longer hidden, no longer reserved.